The life of a coal miner was difficult, exhausting, and could even be deadly. Miners put their lives on the line to provide for their families and to give people a valuable source of energy. There is a group of people in Sparta, Tennessee that recognizes the value that the coal miners brought to their area and decided to bring awareness to the rich history of mining on Bon Air Mountain, the Bon Air Mtn Historical Society.
Our Historical Society began back in 1994 as a school project at Bondycroft Elementary, and with that project we started studying the history of our mountain, our community, so we could teach it to our children. And through that history study, we found that our mountain was involved in coal mining. In 1882, there was a charter that was put out by General George Dibbrell, and in 1888, there was a railroad spur to Bon Air Mountain and coal mining began. And so through that developed the communities of Bon Air, Ravenscroft, Eastland, and Clifty. DeRosset, where this museum is located, was a railroad section community, and that's where the railroad workers stayed. So this house is one of the only original railroad section houses left, and it has been kept in its original quality. And it was built for two different families to live in for the railroad section workers. So one family lived on this side and the other family lived on the other side. As the coal mining communities developed, each community started out with a company store which provided all the needs. Of course, the coal mines and the coal workers were brought in. Originally, they brought in workers from Scotland and Czechoslovakia because our people around here weren't mining that much. So these workers were brought in to train our laborers. And through that, the whole town sprung. They had coal miners' houses that were made by the company. We had the store again. We had the churches, the schools, ball fields, the check office. We had a doctor, at least one, for every community. And it started out just with Bon Air, but then we had the community of Ravenscroft and Clifty and Eastland that also were coal towns on the mountain. A coal miner would usually get up very early in the morning, and his wife would cook breakfast, which consisted of maybe fried potatoes and eggs of some sort, some kind of meat, biscuits, cornbread, or something like that. And she would pack his lunch for the day in a miner's bucket. And in that bucket, the water would go in first, and then on top of it, a tray would be put in that would hold his lunch, and then on top of that, he might have a little dessert. And there wasn't really a specific time for the miner to eat lunch, but if it was a coal digger, he would just take time when it was a good time to sit down and eat his lunch down in the mine. There were other jobs. There were coal diggers, and then there was the mule drivers that took the mules in and out originally, and then later on they had the little motors so that people would drive the motors. They had people that ran the cage, which was the elevator up and down. There was just a lot of different jobs. Ravenscroft was also a coal mining town. It opened around the turn of the century. That's when the train was extended from Bon Air out to Ravenscroft. And this coal mine was a shaft mine. And by 1923, it was the only shaft mine still operating in Tennessee. It shut down around 1936. We acquired the land somewhere around 2014, and in 2015 it's also placed on the National Registry of Historical Places. Through that also we received a grant, and we have made it like a park so people can go out and visit, and we've placed historical signs that tell where the things were and give information. So it's just a real good place to go visit, especially if you have ties to the community. When we first started our project at Bondycroft Elementary School, a few people would bring in items for us to keep. So the school started originally collecting things, but a lot of people didn't give us things because we didn't really have a place to house it. So when we got this museum, just stuff started just pouring in. And we have artifacts that people gave, family heirlooms, miners' hats, equipment. We have a wall in here that tells about the immigrants that came over. We have some famous people that were born here during that time. We have photographs of them. So it's just a collection of tools and items in the kitchen or whatever you would have, the beds and the trunks and the school. We have a school section to show what it was like in the schoolrooms back then. So just a conglomeration of a lot of things. We also house our books that we sell that have a lot of information. Every year we have some annual events that take place, and the first one is our spring walking tour. And this takes place on private property, so it's kind of a neat thing because people get to come into that private property that wouldn't otherwise be able to. We also have an annual history fair, which this is our 24th year, and that is always the first Sunday in May. And the big draw is that we have tour buses that take everybody that wants to the communities. And we're set up in the gym as a history fair. We have a cookout outside and we get on the buses and just make a day of it. So if you enjoy history, community history, coal mining, railroad history, the mountain is a good place to come to. We have our museum is open every Saturday at 10 o'clock to 4. And we have our park out at Ravenscroft. Our history fair, if you come to it, you'll get to take tour buses to see the areas that we're talking about. And it's just a good place to come if you want to learn more.